Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the second day of our business development workshops, which is all part of the 2024 BLDC business plan competition presented by M&T Bank. This is our 14th annual competition, has been in planning since last year. Just to recap, our business plan competition has a $7,500 prize list made possible by the generous co-sponsorship of M&T Bank, with a $5,000 first place cash award, $2,000 second place award, and $500 third place award from the Binghamton Local Development Corporation, plus another $5,000 award of services to the first place winner only, generously donated by Binghamton businesses and organization. That includes 5 hours of accounting services from Davidson Fox of Binghamton, $500 of legal counsel courtesy of Coughlin and Gerhardt LLP Binghamton. We have a speaker today from Coughlin and Gerhardt. 1-year membership in the Greater Binghamton Chamber of Commerce, $500 in sign creation services courtesy of 3i Graphics and Signs, $500 in website services courtesy of Freshie of Binghamton, past competition winner, $500 in branding services courtesy of our leadoff speaker, Yelena Zajac-Holdrege of Idea Craft of Binghamton. 1-year membership in the Triple Cities Makerspace of Binghamton, 3 months free co-working membership at the Kauffman Southern Tier Incubator, courtesy of Binghamton University. Again, thank you all for attending tonight's presentation. Our hope is that this seminar will give you the tools, tips, connections, and inspiration to put together a great business plan that works, most importantly for you and for our community. After this week's presentations, our next milestone is April 3rd with the application and executive summary. You can find the application on the city's website. It's a fillable PDF. And if you have any questions, please give us a call. We're a small office. Do not hesitate to call. Also, you can get a hold of the folks over at the Small Business Development Center. They're located at the Kauffman Incubator here on Hawley Street. The SBDC is a partnership between the U.S. Small Business Administration and Binghamton University. They offer free and confidential counseling on putting together business plans. Call 607-777-4024. We'll post our speakers' presentations on the city website, as well as links for the video recording of tonight's presentations. Our first speaker talking to you about the entrepreneurial mindset has truly lived it. Yelena Zajac-Holdrege is the founder of Idea Craft. She was also a 2014 Binghamton Business Plan Competition winner. She has a Binghamton, New York-based creative agency that builds award-winning brands and websites, from startups and nonprofits to global Fortune 500 companies. Idea Craft helps businesses grow by building smart brands, creating exceptional digital experiences. The company specializes in working with clients for nonprofit, B2B, and manufacturing industries. Yelena's award-winning design work has been recognized by many influential design organizations and major publications. In 2021, Yelena was awarded 2021 Entrepreneur of the Year by New York State's Entrepreneurial Assistance Centers. Again, we are pleased to have Yelena Zajac-Holdrege to speak with us today on the entrepreneurial mindset.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. May I welcome everyone? May I share the screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do it. Let me know if you can see it.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna see if I can do the full screen mode. Can you still see it? No, the pose. Can you still see it or no? Sometimes
Yep. I'm good.
Can you?
Yep.
Because okay, resume share, because I had a message that the screen sharing is paused. So, but you know what, I'm gonna actually return to the sorry for the
I'm seeing it, so
okay. But I'm gonna actually let me do it again. Sorry for that. You would think that after so many years already can you see it when I'm switching the sides? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that's what I want. So thank you, everyone. I just have a couple of slides, just introduction about IdeaCraft. I can't believe it's been 10 years since we won the competition. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. It doesn't fly when you have a hard time. And today I'm gonna talk to you about all because very often we celebrate successes, especially online, and entrepreneurship is hard. And I want to talk to you about some of my biggest failures for the past 10 years, what I've learned from it, and encourage you to, you know, move forward with your business plan, with your pitch. I think, when I look back right now in 10 years, was I fully prepared? No. Did I have all the answers? Absolutely no. And did I have mistakes in my plan? Yes. But I think what I had and what won the judges at the end of the day was the passion for the business, the discipline, and then the kind of a plan that I put together with help of many people. So I think one of the benefits for me to participating in this process was not only winning the prize, which was of course wonderful to have the cash, put it back in the business, but to have access to all the mentors along the road. So I work with accountant, I work with a business plan advisor. All the people helped me actually to build a business plan. And I was told at the beginning, your numbers don't make any sense. And because remember, I was actually I graduated from the art school, not a business school. So I think it was a wonderful, whether you win or not, consider this as a very valuable experience. Anyway, just quickly about IdeaCraft, I welcome you to visit idea-craft.com to see our website and case studies. We've been grown. We started in Binghamton, New York, but now we work with clients across New York State and across the country. So we are kind of an intersection between the branding and digital agency. And what we do, we specialize in brand strategy design, web design development, and content marketing. So we build brands for the startups as well as established companies. We work a lot with the New York State nonprofits. IdeaCraft is also woman-owned business certified. So we work a lot with the government agencies, municipalities, and also with the nonprofits, or a lot of the grant-specific projects. This is just in a nutshell our team. We are a very agile team of a creative from different disciplines, and we have a couple of web developers. We have actually a person remotely from Buffalo. We have an employee from Syracuse, but most of us are actually here based in Southern Tier. This is just a short list of clients that we work with. So we're able to work with names like Caterpillar, Amphenol, Echo Brands, Y, but we also work with a lot of universities. And just to mention a few, Binghamton University, City University of New York, Cortland, Cornell, just to mention a few. And this is just a couple of case studies. Again, I'm not gonna try to go into depth, but just to see the quality of work and the scope. One of them, this was for the Quality Stars New York. That was a project through CUNY a couple years back. We built a pretty comprehensive website. We also helped build a new brand for NIMAC, which is the New York Mid-Atlantic Caribbean Regional Genetics Network. So that was everything from the identity, visual, brand guidelines, and a very robust and user-friendly website. One of our also long-standing clients is Jewish Community Council of the Greater Coney Island. So we work with clients all of the New York State, and we have some clients actually in Brooklyn, and we've been working with them. It was a wonderful, actually, many years right now, 5 or 6 years collaboration. First, we started to launch their new brand, and then we manage a lot of their projects and creative development. So, and actually, fun fact, actually, I never met with them in person. So actually, the COVID brought us closer because we started having actual calls, video calls. So I was able actually to see their team, So I think that COVID, at least for my industry, make the remote work a little bit more flexible. It's kind of become a norm, and also allows us, a company from Binghamton, New York, allows us to work with anyone in the world, really. So anyway, I just want to show, because so when I still consider entrepreneur in work in progress, and I think we're always in. I actually use the same presentation for I think this is my third presentation, and I always go back and see if I could change anything, and it's really not. And hopefully I can just encourage you to not to be afraid to make those mistakes, not to be afraid that you don't have to have everything figured out, and have everything in 100%. Because that's what's going to come along the way. So here's a couple of things. What are my biggest failures? Let's talk about money. Let's go with finance. And cash flow crisis can happen to every company, and it happened to us. And it happened actually when I was out of town on vacation, which is the worst time that could happen. But you know what? I consider this. It happened to me actually beginning of this year from many different reasons. We moved from the way we bill our clients, for actually we start working with the bigger clients with the bigger budgets, but the payables schedule was different, and it just kind of extend the time for receivables. I'm sorry. So there's a lot of different factors. That obviously I consider last year to be also hard for many businesses with inflation rates. So anyway, I consider these things as a learning, and what can we do to prevent the situation to happen. I'm very lucky that I have an accountant. I work with the same accountant for many years right now. He knew my business. He knows my business from inside and out. He's actually local. He just started his own practice, but we've been in us, and having such a accountant is the key. Somebody that can advise me, somebody that can give me. I still have my bookkeeping in house, but with my employee, but we have a great person, finance, who can actually help us not only with, taxes, with planning, with the forecasting. I mean, this is a huge, remember, I'm not a, finance person. So having this key, attorney and accountant and banking relationships, you feel like I am a small business and I don't need that at start. And I would advise you that absolutely you need to start those relationships early on, because these are the people who will help you tremendously. Building your working capital. Sometimes the businesses who participate in the business plan competition are already in a business. There might not, if you're startups, that obviously, you're not gonna be able to without big investment, seed investment, you might not have the working capital, but having that, and again, what we've done when we had a cash flow crisis, we had to cut the bills. And the one thing is that we didn't panic. We figured out how to, and we weathered the storm, and we came up stronger than before. Every business is different. I'm in a service business, and I know a lot of the businesses participating in competition are product, so it's a little bit different too. But what we've learned, when I starting the business, I was just by myself, and slowly I was starting hiring more people. First, they were contractors before they become full-time employees, because right now my staff, because our service-based business, are the biggest expense. And at the beginning of the business, you try to do work, be the jack of all trades sometimes, do work, a lot of different tasks for a lot of different clients. And as you grow, you're going to find your niche. You're going to find that, okay, these are the most profitable projects, and these are the most valuable clients. And you're going to try to seek the new business development in those areas. So not every client is a good client, and we need to be able to recognize those red flags from the beginning. It needs to be now, but now I can tell, you can tell, well, you're smart, that you've been in business for 10 years. Yes, that's give me a little bit more leverage and experience. So I can see if, okay, this is a good fit, not only for clients, but also for us. Am I going to be able to deliver quality work? Am I an expert in their industry? Let's talk about the money early, that makes sure that we're delivering the work, the valuable work, and we're compensated properly, and to be realistic. So that's something that I had to learn in the past 10 years, and I tell you, still learning. But the mistakes get smaller. I mean, take care of your employees. Even if you have a one employee or two, these are my, strength of my company. And, I try to put them first. And because if I take care of them, they take care of the business, right? So when you own your company, you work for everyone else. And your companies and clients, your community, and your family. And your family will bet on you, when you start your business. So you want to make sure that it pays off for everyone. This is tough. I have employees who have been with me for 8, 7 years, and that's long, I think, um, based on the current norms, HR, the people move and out. And I always take, when somebody leaves, I always take it very personally. And I know I shouldn't, because I give the opportunity to grow, and at some point they're gonna outgrow and they're gonna move on, and perhaps some opportunities will present themselves for them. So, but that's something what I've have to admit, this comes also with time and experience. You try to appreciate more and more when you run the business. So a couple of things that I learned in the past 10 years, things I wish knew sooner. Again, I think, just to give you an idea, I came to this country actually 20 years ago. My husband is from the area. I came as an exchange student. I decided to stay. We got married. I applied for adjustment of status. So I'm an immigrant, and I came here without knowing anyone, without no previous, connection. So asking for help was key for me. So a couple of things. When I started my business, I went for the SBDC for my very first business plan and a loan application to buy the furniture for my office. The city of Binghamton, the Economic Development Office, helped me actually find the office that I'm still in. Is at the Lackawanna train station. Yes, I moved from small office to bigger. I've been there for 10 years in that building. And even during the COVID, half of my staff works remotely right now. I kept the office because the rent was good, and there's still some people who actually prefer. I'm the person who likes to go to the office and works in the office, and we decided to keep it. So we didn't go actually full. We have like a hybrid, have a model. I also did. I didn't participate in the course for Entrepreneurial Assistance Center at SUNY Broome, but I did my WBA certification there. So I've used every possible, and all of the services were free of charge, and I try to maximize it. So I think that one of the quality, I think, that helped me to start a business and win the competition and run the business was not to be afraid to admit I don't know anything. I don't know anything, everything. I need help. I'm not shy to ask for help. One thing also to specialize, as I said at the beginning, I was maybe my services were a little bit wider, maybe my markets there. So right now we kind of in our new business development process and in our services, we try to limit ourselves to specific verticals like nonprofit, manufacturing, and business to business. So that's something that I wish that I've done a little bit sooner, but we're always learning, and I think right now we're able to handle bigger projects, and more specialized because of the expertise we're able to acquire. Again, not to be afraid to mistakes. I'm very often ask my key staff, my senior staff, what would you do if you were me? Like, I don't make the one. It can be very lonely. One thing that I'm finding actually very helpful that I started to practice last year is to meet peers to peers with similar companies. This week, I'm going for lunch with actually a person who runs a print shop in Whitney Point, and we're gonna just talk shop. We're gonna talk about some HR. You wouldn't believe how many, like we facing a lot of very often, very similar obstacles and problems. And the peer-to-peer kind of a mentoring, I'm finding really valuable. For me, creating a routine was really, and being very disciplined. People are sometimes envious that you run your own business, but they don't know they actually, when you run you work for yourself, you work a lot, especially at the beginning. There was a long nights and long days in the office. Now become a little bit more structured, but I still very disciplined, and I kind of thrive on that very a routine in everything I do. What I said, never stop learning. I read a lot. I learn, listen to the podcast, online courses, leadership training. I actually use the SBDC also for emerging leaders program. There was I believe it was a 12-week program a couple years back in Syracuse. I traveled there every other week for a couple hours. Amazing also. So even I was already in the business for years, I felt like I still could, and I still could. And right now I feel I'm looking into exposing myself to maybe conferences, go to trade shows and industry specific conferences, because we need to definitely stop, keep evolving and keep learning. And, you know, uh, yeah, and don't be afraid to talk about money. I think money was when I was a very shy when I was starting the business. I let very often clients to dictate our rates, or I wasn't very good in negotiating. But I think that's something that comes with experience and with time, and that people actually value when your service, if and your product, if actually they're willing to pay if the product does a quality. So yeah, and the better margins equal better firms and better clients. So it's still learning. Creative business, I think it's hard and it's very competitive. So for us, it's always the balance of keeping our quality along with competitive, because we take parts in a lot of the RFPs, it means a request for proposals. So it's a lot of bidding. I'm going to Albany next month to bid for a big project with a state agency, and I don't know who I'm gonna face. Who's gonna be other agencies trying to get the business. So it's definitely a very competitive market for us. Couple of things I always try to. There's tons of for entrepreneurship books on the market. I have a couple of few that I go back to, and I would like to just show you. You might have heard of Tim Ferriss. He's a kind of a giant in the entrepreneurship world. And Tool of Titans, it's kind of a book that it's not a book for sit and read from top to bottom. It's something that you can go back to. It has a lot of different sections, and he pretty much interview the icons and world-class performance on their tactics, routines, and habits. Super interesting book. Built to Sell, one of the most, for whether you are a service business or product business, this is an excellent book, a very quick read, very enjoyable. It actually talks about very similar agency to mine. The owner wants to actually sell the business, but the business at the time it's not sellable because he's so much involved in the business and he does a lot of things to a lot of clients. He doesn't have a clear process. So this was a great, and actually, for me, I always think about it and go back to it. And because my goal too is to, make the business sellable. So everything we do is very process oriented. We try to treat our service as a product. So one day, hopefully I'm going to be able to walk away from the company and the company is just going to be able to run on itself. I think it already can to some extent, but that's really the goal eventually, to sell or being acquired by a larger agency. Writing their works, that's something that, the communication is the key no matter what you do, what type of position you holding in the company. So this is something that will come really handy with, also writing a business plan as well. But even from things like emails, letters, memos, presentations, amazing book. And the Win Without Pitching Manifesto is also that you create a type of business that clients will actually come to you versus you always chasing the next project, and how to sell yourself through building the expertise and great tools. So anyway, this is just a few. Okay, I try to keep it very short. I know we have a half an hour. I want to open to some questions if there are any. If you don't want to ask, here's my email, eholdrege@idea-craft.com. Give me a call or send me an email. I can answer your questions, and yeah, that's what I have. So hopefully that was interesting a little bit. Any questions?
Great job. You guys can post it in the chat if you like either.
Okay. Yeah, again, it'd be funny. I had to actually go back to my business plan from 10 years back. I think I remember one comment, I think it came from Cheryl. It was that I didn't have a vision in my business plan, right? Seems like a very you have your vision, you have your mission, and the kind of a basic thing that made me really, think of why, if I want to, obviously they're running a business is to make it profitable. But right now is, that the most successful business are the business who actually have a clear vision statement and the mission, because people will follow you if you have, common values. So that's something that is super important right now to us. I remember I had some typos in my, which is very embarrassing, and I shouldn't right now after 10 years, although English is not my first language. With the AI, there should be no use AI to proofread to, now you have the tools that we didn't have 10 years ago.
Right,
So
right.
so I use AI to proof all of my emails or my presentations. Obviously, I have people who also help me to write them, but I have something I'm writing myself. I help AI to, hey, help me with this email subject, or help me, please proofread my email. So that's something you have a tools that you can use in writing your, it will not replace your creative writing, but it
Right,
can help you. So,
right.
yeah, I guess I need to yeah, the times has changed. So there's a lot of tools right now available creating the content.
We have a
Okay.
question here from
Yeah.
David Sitar. Clothing branding is pretty tricky and cutthroat. Any thoughts? He's asking for a friend, apparently.
You know,
Clothing
I
branding.
I'm not sure, I'm not an expert in the clothing branding. Um, I know it's a very competitive market, but I would imagine if I was starting a clothing brand, to having a strong online presence is the key, and using social media to advertising. Using our agency actually worked in the past with content creators. So the whole advertising industry has changed so much in the past couple years that we don't very often create a content. We work with content creators to based on the target audience, based on the product they're selling. It's really that the content, economy, that's what it's called. It's really reinvented the way the brands are selling. So not only the great product that you have to offer, but a great e-commerce website, and a great marketing will be the key for the successful of the brand.
Sure.
And finding your niche audience, obviously knowing like who's your target audience and who are we talking, where they're shopping, what do they value, what do they like, having the clear description. Obviously, the online advertising, digital advertising can target those, people very clearly. But, you just want to kind of find the same people to believe in your mission and like your product.
He has a follow-up here. He says, who is to do the work of vetting originality of brand names,
Okay.
such as sales mark, trademark, register, and their
Okay. Okay.
overlap with available e-commerce website domain versus LLC,
Mm-hmm.
INC names?
Okay, it's a very good question. So as an agency where we work with startups, we can search for like a brainstorm for the name of the company. We can help them to find a domain. You can actually go to GoDaddy.com as example and type any domain. It can tell you whether it's available or not. Obviously, finding a good domain is the key, not only for the search engine optimization, but it should be short, memorable. It should have a name of your business for the search engine optimization purposes. But when it comes to the legality of the name, then I would research a trademark attorneys or local firms, specialize in that can help you actually to register your name or see if there's available. And I think there's a registry that you can see if they can, is there something that you can secure. So yeah, so it starts sometimes very often starts with a creative agency, but then you're responsible for the to registering the trademark. Mhm.
We just saw Sam Blakely there, who was
Yeah,
a
okay, I know they're
speaker
talking about it. Yep,
with
yeah, he
Coughlin
can,
and Gerhardt,
you can chime in. Yeah.
I was giving the thumbs up that you're absolutely correct because there is actually a full database that will show all of the registered trademarks that is maintained by the federal government. So it is a searchable database that is open to everyone.
Mhm.
So I was just giving a little thumbs up. She's
Okay,
absolutely
great.
correct.
Great. Anything else?
I don't
Okay.
know. I'm
I'll,
just curious, your business plan, the one that you created originally, does
yeah.
that still exist and it kind of morphed and that's still a living document with you or?
Yes, well, I used that as a draft for when I did the SBDC Emerging Leaders Program. I wrote my 3-year strategic plan. So that was a little bit a condensed version of my business plan. So yes, it transformed, obviously. It,
Right.
different numbers, different, but I think the core business, it's essentially the same, right? So we haven't evolved that much. We introduced some of the new services like a content creation, influencer marketing, which we haven't had it. So, it's kind of evolution of our business, but the key branding and web design development, it's pretty much the same. So yes, it changed. Yeah, it had the different versions. Yeah, over the years, which
Hey,
is
one final question
yep.
I'll ask you. Do you have any heroes, entrepreneurial heroes that, people that you think like, wow, that's somebody who really,
Mm-hmm.
has key attributes or personality
Mm-hmm.
pluses that you'd like to emulate or
It's a good
just look up
question.
to?
And I don't think I have a one particular hero. Being in the shoes of entrepreneur, I know how hard it is. And I value really the small, medium-sized businesses, and the owners who, hustle every day. But I want to give you one example, or actually the book I recently read on Elon Musk. And I know he's a very interesting persona. There's a different opinions, obviously, and emotions when you mention his name. But what I like about it is the fascinating book, how he built all those businesses and then, how he built a PayPal, the very first business he sold that he was one of the founders of PayPal, before he built actually Tesla, then the SpaceX and all the companies. And what I really took from this book that he questioned pretty much every, he for in the SpaceX business, he, reinvented the whole manufacturing process of those rocket parts. It's something that cost 2 million. He was able to manufacture by $200,000. But he questioned like every single thing in the manufacturing process, in the supply chain, and the design, regardless of his other adventures like the Twitter and and in personality. Some of the key findings and learnings from me was how he was able to not, question status quo, right? And even the way the government was buying and purchasing, NASA was actually, he sued NASA at some point and won that, the way they were actually awarding those. So you just have to, that's what I enjoyed listening. And it's like, how can I, for example, what I took is how can my developers work closely with my designers, how they can, because he made actually the engineerings work with the designers, everyone work together, because you can't work in silos and not knowing what the other group is doing. So there's a little things that I was able to actually get inspired by. Another book, one more book that I actually should bring that I thought is by is the Shoe Dog. It's by the founder of Nike. Also
Okay.
amazing. I can't remember his name right now. Amazing biography he wrote about how he started the Nike brand,
Hmm.
and how he's actually started selling shoes from his back of his car, like a running shoes, and a passion for the sport and running, and how they were operating from a little also garage for many years before they become the multi-billion-dollar company. Amazing book, about the dedication, about belief in the product. Yeah, so that was a two. So I guess you'd say,
That'll be another one. Good.
yeah, I guess that would be the founder of Nike, which I have to find it right now because I can't believe I can't remember his um Phil Knight. There you go. So you can
Bill.
call it Phil Knight, who is my hero, actually, entrepreneur. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Excellent.
Sorry, I tell you more probably than you wanted or needed. So, but
All right. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for having me. Good luck, everyone.
Okay. And I think we'll move on now to Sam Blakley. First up, joining us to talk about legal concerns with setting up a business is attorney Samuel Blakley. Mr. Blakley joined Coughlin and Gerhardt LLP as an associate in 2021. His practice is concentrated in the firm's practice areas of litigation and business banking. During law school, he was a clinical student with Penn State Law's Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic in State College. While there, he assisted startups and small businesses with forming their entities, creating organizational documents, and drafting contracts. Mr. Blakley was also a summer associate at Coughlin and Gerhardt in 2019. Prior to joining Coughlin and Gerhardt, Mr. Blakley was a clinical student with a Penn State Law Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic clinical student from 2018 to 2020, was a legal intern with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in 2017. This guy has a lot of background in putting together businesses, and I think he's a very credible speaker. So please welcome our attorney here, Sam Blakley.
Well, hi, everyone. So I'm going to take a second here to make sure I can get my presentation to open. I'm going to apologize that I'm not on my own usual setup here.
Yep.
So I'm going to hope that
we can see it. I think you just need to hit slideshow at the top.
Oh, there it comes.
There we go. Beautiful.
All right. You know, I do think it's usually pretty funny. The presentation I've done for this program for the last couple of years has always followed up like a very creative presentation where we're, you know, talking about a very a less highly structured thing, which I think then gives the title "Visualize Your Business" a little bit of a misleading name once you start talking about what's actually going to be in the content here. So what we're going to be running through today is actually selecting a legal structure and the organization of businesses. And so our agenda, if the computer will keep up with me. Sorry, I should have gone to the computer I usually use. What we're going to be running through today is very simply, we're going to very, very briefly, because I've already been introduced who I am. We're going to talk about entity selection and structure basics, and then a little bit about other considerations you might want to keep in mind as you're picking your structure and putting together your business, both at a legal and organizational level. There'll be space for Q&A at the end. Oftentimes, a lot of the things people want to talk about in the Q&A may be better associated with offline. So at the end of the presentation is all of my contact information, which you're welcome to take down. I do have to do this little blurb here on the side before I dive into everything. I'm admitted to practice law only in the state of New York and technically in New Jersey as well. And the information contained in the materials is not intended to be and should not be construed as legal or tax advice to you, but is merely for discussion purposes and is intended merely to convey general information related to legal and tax issues commonly encountered by new business owners. The information is not intended to create, and the receipt of it does not constitute attorney-client relationship. Legal counsel and tax advisor should be consulted with respect to any specific situation or issues which advice is desired. The presentation may contain attorney advertising, and prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. With that in mind, you know, I've already been introduced a little bit here. My name is Sam Blakley. I'm a fourth-year associate with Coughlin and Gerhardt. I primarily practice in our litigation department, but as was alluded to, I think twice in my little bio there, before joining the firm to practice litigation, for several years I was with the Penn State Law's Entrepreneurial Assistance Program. The EAC is primarily focused on helping small business owners form their entities, put together their first contracts, and connect them with professionals. This way they can get their business off the ground. And it's a completely free service that is offered throughout Pennsylvania, and it's run through that clinic program. So this topic is actually a lot of where I started my legal career and something that I still consider very close to my heart. So I do like being able to talk about it. As we run through these things about entity selections and structure basics, I'm going to do my best to try to be a little more entertaining since the law is often a little dry. And we'll go through that as we get there. One of the first things that we should definitely talk about, and the reason I put up this little picture of a map, is when we're talking about entity basics, they can be slightly different across the different states you may interact with. We're going to be talking at a very high level of things that are in common across most states. And most states will have their own set of laws about, you know, each will have their own LLC laws, each their own corporations law, or business partnerships laws. And you'll want to make sure that you're working with professionals in those states to help you understand if there's anything different you need to be aware of in them. Another important thing to be aware of is that if you're operating in various states, you need to make sure you are authorized to do so. So you may still want to, you want to make sure you're talking with attorneys for each one of the states you're going to interact with, and especially in the one where you plan to form your business. So when you're first getting started, there are a lot of questions that you should ask yourself. And one of the most important set of questions I've kind of put up here. especially when you're starting to think about your entity. So how am I starting the business? Am I buying a business that already exists? Am I converting a business that I've already been running as a sole prop into maybe an LLC, into a new entity? Am I starting completely from scratch without anything that I'm really, carrying over from a prior excursion? How am I raising capital? Am I looking for loans? Am I going to get investors? Am I going to be putting in my own seed money, or other people giving me seed money that are looking to get back? What do I envision my company looking like in the future? Am I going to have employees that work directly for me? Am I going to be outsourcing to contractors? Bringing in contractors to do particular work on projects that I can't do? Am I going to be looking to run this completely solo on my own without, other people really being involved? And then what are your long-term plans with your business? Are you going to be building it to run in the long term? Are you building it to try to sell it off in the future? Are you building it for the purpose of bringing in investors to then grow it even larger? And then, of course, what is the biggest question, which takes up the whole right-hand side of our screen, is what are the risks that I might be facing? Because the types of risk you might be facing are really what's going to drive the importance of selecting your entity. So today, we're going to be talking about 4 types of entities. And I know right off the bat, you're probably going to say, well, Sam, there are 5 bullet points on this screen, and you said 4. Well, that's right. There are 4 entity types we're going to be talking about, which are sole proprietorships, partnerships, limited liabilities, and corporations. The other 2 items on here, a C Corp and an S Corp, are actually tax elections. And you will probably hear people talk about these a lot when you are forming your business and selecting your entity type. But you should not mistake them for entity types. They are tax elections that can be used with various types of entities. We're going to talk about them a little bit towards the end, but they are definitely things you should be familiar with, because they're going to be kind of mixed in with the standard language of people you speak with when you're forming your business. So we're going to start first with sole proprietors. Now, a sole proprietorship is the easiest style of business to form because it's very, very simple. It's just an individual who is the individual owner who is just operating a business under either their own name or an assumed name. Now, an assumed name, which I'll talk about a little bit on the next slide, is little more than what you would call a DBA, or a fictitious name filing that you file with your local county clerk. Say you wanted to operate a company called Blakley's Bakery, and I'm just going to be, running out of my own home and selling cookies online and shipping them out. I could just file a DBA in my local county clerk that says I am now operating as Blakley's Bakeries, and I can put that name on contracts. Of course, the way that goes on contracts would be my name followed by DBA, doing business as Blakley's Bakery. The pros of a sole proprietorship, very easy to form. There's not much you have to do. If you want to operate it under your own name, you don't really do a whole lot. If you want to call yourself something, you file a DBA. And otherwise, you can just start doing it. You have really complete control and freedom over your business without much oversight, other than, as long as you're not doing anything illegal. And there's no real profits to share because, as the name says, in a sole proprietorship, it's just you. The cons, of which there are many, but the 2 big ones are that you're going to enjoy full personal liability for anything that happens. And it's going to be probably very hard to raise money if that's one of your goals. The full personal liability is one you might want to really be more focused on in this instance. And sticking with myself, say I decided to open Blakley's Bakery and I have a little shop down on Front Street. If someone were to try to walk in the front door and they trip over the little weather stripping and fall and hit their head, when they sue Blakley's Bakery, they have just sued me personally, and all of my personal assets will now be at risk, like my bank accounts, my homes, my car, and things like that. That liability falls squarely on me. There is no entity between me and that issue. Same thing with if someone were to get food poisoning. Or there's something wrong with cookies that I sell and there's some issue that goes on there, it's really just turning towards me. And the issue of it being hard to raise money, you don't really have an entity, so people are going to be less inclined to just hand you money and say they're investing in you. But we'll talk about more of the types of entities that will enjoy the ability to do that. Before we get there, DBAs, as promised, DBA stands for doing business as, and I also refer to them as fictitious name filings, which is a little more common from my time in Pennsylvania. Again, what it allows you to do is operate under a particular name, but it does not provide you any protection. That is something that I cannot stress enough. That is often a misconception amongst people, that they think filing the DBA gives them a company, or it gives them an entity, or it gives them protection. It does not give you anything. It does just allow you to operate with that name, with the DBA after yours and then the name you have selected. So me signing contracts would be Sam Blakley, DBA, Blakley Bakery. It would not provide me with any protection really whatsoever. It also doesn't really give you any rights in the name. If you have filed a DBA for Blakley's Bakery and say my dad has the same idea and he decides he wants to open Blakley's Bakery and he files an LLC, he's going to have superior rights in that name than I do by his LLC filing. So the DBA does not grant you very much other than the right to use a name. Moving up from sole proprietorship, we have a general partnership. Now, a general partnership is essentially if you were to take two sole proprietors and they want to do business together, now they are working as a general partnership. So a general partnership is that simple. It's two or more people carrying on a business for profit. It is formed very informally. All you really have to do is decide that two people are going to be working together for the purpose of making profit. It can also be formed in a semi-formal way by creating a written partnership agreement, but it's not required. Partnerships are one of the types of entities where if you do not have a written partnership agreement, there are general laws that apply and govern and tell you how the partnership is going to run and operate from a legal perspective. The pros of a general partnership are that, again, they're very easy to form. You don't have to do a whole lot. There's no mandatory filings that are involved with a general partnership. And you have shared management responsibility with now this other person that you're running a business with. So you get to share the load with that person, and they will help you run the business. So the two of you operate together. The cons, there are almost as many cons in the general partnership as there are in the sole proprietorship. You still enjoy unlimited personal liability, except you now also essentially have more liability for the acts of the other partner who is making them for you. So say there are 5 of you and one of you decides to make a decision that harms the company, you're all going to be essentially liable from that decision. You can enjoy some limited liability for the acts of other partners in the partnership, but those are going to be under particular circumstances, which we're not going to dive into today. And the other one is going to be, again, it's going to be very tough to raise capital in a partnership from outside. Raising capital from the inside of the partnership will not be as difficult as long as you guys are all contributing. But again, if you're looking for investors that are looking to give you money for some level of ownership in the company or some financial stake, the partnership is not going to be a very attractive setup to them because they're not going to look to want to join and become a partner with you and enjoy some of that unlimited personal liability just for investing money in your company. Now, spinning off from a regular partnership, we have what's called a limited partnership. It is very similar to the general partnership, except you are able to give a class of owners limited liability, which is kind of what that name suggests. The limitation of liability comes from being allowed to now have a set of partners join by contributing only a certain dollar value, and their liability is now limited by the amount of money they have invested. There are a lot of rules in how limited partners get to interact in the business, and the limited partners are not permitted to act in the same ways that general partners are. So in your general partnership, everyone's a general partner. Everyone participates in the management and operation of the company. When you have a limited partnership, you then end up with 2 classes of partners. You have the general partners, who are just like from the prior class of all general partnership, and you have your limited partners, who have just invested some amount of money to now be a limited owner. Now, the limited partners get to enjoy in the financial portion of the business, kind of like an investor would, but they are very limited in what they are allowed to do insofar as actually operating and directing the business. If they do too much of that, they may find themselves being classified as a general partner when they aren't looking to do so. Limited partnerships are formed by filing a certificate of limited partnership with the Department of State. That's true across most states. In New York, there is also a publication requirement, which is a little archaic, but you'll find that exists in a handful of these, which is you must publish in 2 newspapers for 6 consecutive weeks announcing that your limited partnership has been formed. The pros of the limited partnership, as we're starting to move towards entities with protection, is that the limited partners are going to enjoy limited liability as long as they maintain themselves as essentially non-managing partners. So they can't really engage in the same actions the general partners do, as we've already kind of covered. The cons are that there is unlimited liability still for all those managing partners. So for those general partners. And then again, as we've discussed, if the limited partners engage in management, they end up also now being classified as general partners and enjoy unlimited liability. And of course, a con, which is going to be consistent going forward, is that there are going to be formal requirements for creating your limited partnership, which are going to be filings. The final version of partnerships is the limited liability partnership, LLP, which you'll often see at the end of law firm names. Limited liability partnerships are a much more formal general partnership where all the partners can enjoy limitations on their liability based on contributions and their essential buy-in. It is formed and requires a written partnership agreement, which spells these things out. You must file a certificate of registration with the Department of State in virtually every state you do it, and it also has a similar publication requirement to the limited partnership. The pros in this kind of setup is that all partners can participate in management the same way general partners would, while still enjoying limited liability. And it is a pretty flexible structure. The cons are really that there are annual filing requirements, and there may still be instances where you have malpractice insurance required. Now, when you hear limited liability partnership, LLP, and reading all these things, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why don't more people have LLPs versus the other entity types that we're going to cover very shortly? And the answer is just quite simply that the other entity types are more flexible and provide more protection than just the limited liability partnership does. Now, limited liability companies, LLCs. This is probably the entity type that you've heard about the most. It is also, technically speaking, the youngest type of entity of all the ones that we've discussed. Young in the legal world does not actually mean new, but it does mean it is close to being the newest and less than 100 years old in most instances. When we're talking about limited liability companies, we are talking about the fusion of what you would think of as the corporate structure and partnership. It is designed to be a hybrid of the two, taking all the benefits of having the highly organized and liability shields in the corporation and merging them with that nice flexibility of organization from partnerships themselves to create this hybrid. In a limited liability company, your members can own and manage the company. They can participate in all aspects of the company itself. They receive payments by virtue of being owners, which you are allowed to modify, and they can own either by membership interest or by membership stock, just the way you would in a corporation. Interest being you just divvy out a certain percentage, stock being you actually issue share certificates. Limited liability companies are formed by filing articles of organization with the Department of State. They do also have a publication requirement, and they have, similar to how a partnership has a partnership agreement, a limited liability company has an operating agreement. The operating agreement functions sort of like the constitution of your business. It spells out a lot of very important things, which I have a slide later on that we'll cover about what your organizational documents will spell out and can modify. But what's important to know is that that you will have an operating agreement or should have an operating agreement, and that it allows you to customize a lot about your limited liability company. The pros about LLCs are that they have limitations on liabilities the same way a corporation does. In the previous entities that we've talked about, there is no separation between you and liability. If something goes wrong in the partnership, the people who are looked at to be liable are the partners. It doesn't, whether it's the general partnership, the limited partnership, or the limited liability partnership, if something were to go wrong, the person who is suing is going to be naming you guys individually as the people responsible. Once we get into the realm of limited liability companies and corporations, there is now an entity between you and liability. The limited liability company is itself its own separate and distinct person from you for the purpose of liability. So forming Blakley's Bakery LLC, getting back to our first example where I was originally a sole prop and am now an LLC, if someone were to trip and fall as they walk into the Blakley's Bakery, when they sue Blakley's Bakery, they are suing Blakley's Bakery. They're not suing me personally. Now, Blakley's Bakery, as a completely separate entity, is going to own its own assets, have its own cash pool. It's going to have its own set of debts and its own assets. And what is at risk for the limited liability company is what the limited liability company owns. Things beyond that I own, my own house, my car, my bank accounts are no longer in question when we have the entity in between us. There are some situations where you still can, which is a phrase that you might hear called piercing the corporate veil. It's a little bit more complex and technical than the scope of what we're talking about here today. But Generally speaking, once we're in limited liability companies and corporations, there is now a full entity that stands between you and liability when things go wrong. It also means that there's a different entity that owns and operates and holds all the assets that are associated with your company. So those are not held in your own personal name either. Now, a function of LLCs where we can talk about why they are so flexible is because you have two options when creating them to have them either be member managed or manager managed. Now, member managed, you would think along the lines of partnership. All of the owners operate as operators. So they can all make decisions that bind the company. They can all be, boots on the ground. They can all be making management level decisions. They can all be making the kind of decisions you would think of are reserved for like a CEO or a CFO. And that's, just like a partnership. On the opposite end, you can also decide to structure your LLC as manager managed, which means the members now operate more like a board of directors. Like shareholders. They get to elect a board of directors, a CEO, a CFO, a president, a vice president, a treasurer, to actually then come in and act as the managers, which they're allowed to name anything they want, who actually run and do the day-to-day operations of the business and allow the members to, act a little bit more like shareholders, where they can either be passive recipients of financial gain, or they can also elect themselves to be those managers. So again, the LLC provides a lot of flexibility because it gives you the ability to structure yourself more like a partnership or more like a corporation. Which is a good then lead in to talking about corporations. Corporations are the classic business structure that you may think of when thinking of a business. Corporations are entire separate legal entities that can be sued, enter into their own contracts. I'm sure somewhere you've heard that corporations are people too. They, just like the limited liability company, are their own separate and distinct person from all of the owners, which we would call shareholders. The company is owned by the shareholders or stockholders, guided by its board of directors, and operated by its boots on the ground. Corporations are formed by filing articles of incorporation, hence the INC, with the Department of State, and it is governed by bylaws instead of a partnership agreement or an operating agreement. The bylaws give that sort of backbone the same way those two documents do. There would also be a shareholders agreement, which is between the different members that own the actual shares, where the bylaws then function more to govern the board of directors and the actual operations. Your pros in a corporation are enjoying limited liability. The bigger pro of the corporation is the ease of raising capital. Now, this does not mean that just because you form a corporation, people are going to be climbing over themselves to give you money. But the corporation is the most standard and recognized setup for investors when they are putting money into a business. They are looking for you to have a corporation which can issue different levels of stock that then say what kind of things those stock are that the stockholders are then entitled to, whether you have Class A that's going to be financial and management, and then Class B where they only have financial interest. These are the kinds of entities that most investors are going to look for you to have when they are putting capital into your business. The cons of corporations, as to be expected, are that they require pretty rigorous record keeping, and they are pretty heavily regulated. As examples on below, there's Security Exchange Commissions. New York law has a wide berth of corporations law, which also govern, which you can modify slightly with your bylaws and your shareholders agreement. But there's a lot of essential oversight that you want to be aware of when you're operating a corporation, which you do not really have with the limited liability company. But again, your trade-off being investors are very much going to be looking for you to be a corporation. At least that's been the experience we've had, because it is an entity structure that they are much more familiar with. Limited liability companies have been coming around for investors, but really, as we're seeing things, even companies with limited liability companies today, investors are still looking for people to convert their LLCs into corporations before they're putting money in, for their own safety and for their familiarity with it. I do see I'm at 6 o'clock, and I am going to be rolling. I'm almost done. With the structures in mind, we want to talk about Well, actually, hang on. So this is still corporation structure. So it really shouldn't say C corp structure. But the structure of your corporation is you have shareholders up at the top, and your shareholders are electing your board of directors. Your board of directors are then appointing your president, your vice president, your treasurer, and your CFO. And then money kind of flows upwards. All the money that's produced by the the officers is going to look to be distributed to the shareholders in what are, as we may know from owning stocks, dividends. C corps are very hierarchical. You have requirements on having boards of directors and presidents in New York on who you have to have and the numbers of who you have to have. And then the general idea in a C corp structure is that the owners, so the difference with a C corp structure, which is what a corporation defaults to, is that when the corporation makes money as a separate entity, the corporation pays taxes. When the corporation then wants to pay its owners, the shareholders, that is a taxable event as well. The dividends that are paid to shareholders are taxed. So the C corp structure, which allows to have this big separation between all the various people who run, does come with that drawback of what we call the double taxation problem, which you will not find necessarily with the default structures in partnerships and LLCs, which are standard on partnership taxation. The third type of taxation, which is the other one in there, is what's called an S corp. And this is something you're probably going to hear a lot about when forming your business and talking with your accountant. In S corp, the easiest way to think about it, the S standing for small. Small businesses have the ability to elect themselves as an S corp, which gives them some of the benefits of having a corporate tax set up while still also having pass-through payments to their owners. It's a bit of a complicated structure that you would best have explained to you by your accountant or a tax professional. But the important parts that you need to know on putting together an S corp, it is that there are a certain number of restrictions on it that you need to be aware of. You can only have it with less than 100 stockholders. All the stockholders have to be human beings, so you can't have investment companies coming in on your small businesses. And there can only be one class of stock, which means everyone has to benefit in the same way. So you can't have an A class and a B class and an S corp. You can't just have people who have management rights and people who just have financial rights. Everyone has to be looked at as the same when they are an owner in an S corp. The pros is that there are usually a wide array of tax benefits that are offered for companies that are organized as S corps in their tax election. There is slightly less oversight with the S corps. The cons, really, you can't be publicly traded. It does eliminate eligibility for your investors who are likely going to be other companies looking to come in and invest money, and especially ones that are looking to come and invest money and then not have management responsibilities. Again, the S corp is really just something for you to be more aware of because you likely hear about it as you talk with your tax professionals. So be aware. I do want to also give you just a quick visualization of what I'm talking about with the taxation of entities, because it's hard to visualize when you just describe, the corporation is taxed, is double taxed, and your partnership or S corp gets to enjoy what's called pass-through or flow-through taxation. So with your C corp structure, which is standard to the corporation, when that corporation as a separate entity makes money, it pays tax for making money. So the corporation has its own tax bill. When the corporation then wants to pay its owners, the shareholders, which is done through dividends, the dividend is also a taxable event for the shareholders. So the shareholders each now pay tax on the payment that they received. This is not the same when we're over in the category of LLCs, partnerships, or S corps that are using the flow-through taxation or pass-through taxation. The LLC itself, which is, we're going to use the LLC as an example in a partnership taxation structure. As the money comes into the LLC, it is not taxed. The members are the only ones that are taxed on the income. This is a upside for not experiencing double taxation. It can be a downside for members because the income that's on the books is what is attributed to you. So that profit is distributed out to you guys, whether or not the profit is actually given to you for taxes. So the company may show, low numbers, keep things easy, $200 of profit on the book. So each member, being a 50-50 owner, now shows that they each made $100 in the LLC that year. Except you probably didn't distribute all the profit out of your company because you've probably reinvested it to try to grow and make things better. that does not get really accounted for anywhere. The profit is just the profit. Reinvesting is usually not accounted for in there. So you may have essentially a phantom tax given to you on money you don't actually have. So you'll need to keep that in mind when using pass-through taxation. Couple last quick words on things. Certain types of professions are considered restricted in New York, and they are not allowed to use particular types of entities. Additionally, they are required to otherwise identify themselves as professional companies and have to be registered with the Secretary of State. So things like lawyers, where they'll see PLLC at the end, land surveyors, doctors have to register as professional companies. Generally speaking, these are types of professions where you have to maintain malpractice insurance. The goal is to prevent the professionals from being able to just push off their liability to a company and still require them to be responsible if they were to commit malpractice in one of their licensed fields. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at structures. Names and intellectual property. So this is something that came up in your last one as a question. When you're talking about the Secretary of State, no two companies may register with identical names. You can have situations where you have the same name registered as an LLC or a corporation because they have different designators, so they're not technically identical. Generally speaking, when you register a company, first in time is going to be first in right. If you get there first with your registration, you will usually have the right to keep that name over someone who tries to register it later. But not always, because we have to think about the fact that there is also a trademark database federally. So you may not have full absolute rights to your name. And of course, your corporate registration is not a trademark, which is where we're talking about in the not always. Very quickly on structured documents, operating agreements for LLCs, bylaws, shareholder agreements for corporations, partnership agreements for partnerships. They cover a lot of things, and they're very important aspects to have put together at the outset for avoiding issues with your business partners later. These things cover how do owners get paid, when do they get paid, what kind of actions is the company going to take that requires us to agree and take votes on, what actions can you do to remove owners, or even can you remove owners if something goes wrong, can owners sell their shares of your business to other people if they want to exit, what happens if an owner dies, considering their ownership is technically personal property. How does that get handled by the company? There are a lot of things that you may not be thinking about at the front end when putting together your business and wanting to, get into the fun part of running it, that you want to make sure you work with a lawyer to ensure that they are accounted for at the outset. Location, generally speaking, you want to make sure that you are looking at where you currently are operating your business and talking with an attorney about whether or not registering in Delaware is in your best interests. I'm sure everyone's heard about how most companies are formed in Delaware because of their favorable laws. Again, that's something to work with your lawyer about. And my final slide here, which I always strongly encourage people, is you are a business owner and you are running a business, and this is what your business is what you're best at. Your professional network is who you need to put together to help you with everything else. If you're running Blakley's Bakery and you make a mean cake, you're probably not the best accountant. You may not be, fluent in insurance agreements. You may not be fluent in real estate to do brokers. You may not be the best at, working with bankers or being able to read contracts. You need to make sure you have a professional network put together as you're assembling your business. This way, you can bounce these important questions off the right people. Again, not necessarily visualizing your business, but visualizing the network that also helps support and float your business as you grow and progress. And with that, I am out of slides. You should absolutely feel free to send me emails because I know that I run through this presentation very quickly. It's hard to boil this stuff down even further than where it already is because there's just so much. There's so much that can be spoken about each one of these entity types to try to squish them into a half hour, which I always inevitably run over. So, if you do have particular questions you didn't want to ask in the general chat to have answered, you are more than welcome to shoot me an email about them. If I don't know the answer, Coughlin Gerhardt is an office with 55 plus attorneys with many, many discipline areas. We have 7 offices and operate all across the southern tier and in northern Pennsylvania. If I don't know the answer, I guarantee someone I work with does. With that being said,
We did have one question in our chat here from David Sitar. Quote, I am curious about B Corp 2 and whether a C Corp, for-profit, and 501c3 nonprofit can exist under its umbrella. A B Corp.
I'd really have to think, but I'm not.
I didn't think you could necessarily put for-profit and nonprofit entities together.
Well, so and David, you're welcome to jump in to maybe elaborate on your question. My understanding of B Corps is that it's more of a public benefit corporations. Yeah. So if public benefit corporation in the sense that you're talking about in the realm of 501c3s or in the other 501 categories, they are generally formed as a corporation, but then there are different rules that apply to public benefit corporations and the 501 companies. They are a little bit different, and they are definitely not something that is covered in this in this slideshow. If there are particular interests you have about nonprofits, Brady Beagle in my office is an excellent resource that I can connect you with, who can probably answer any specific questions you have about public benefit corporations and really how they'd work in this instance. But
yeah, I didn't think they could exist under the same umbrella, can they?
So
For-profit and nonprofit?
So technically, no. I mean, there's sort of a strange gray area with the exact language escapes me right now for what they're called. But so public benefit corporations and it's a type of a public foundation, but foundations have some abilities to operate to generate profits. So they're kind of somewhere in a gray nebulous area, but they distribute their profits for the purpose of benefiting certain other organizations. So I don't know if that's particular to the question that he's referencing. It is an entire different body of law from anything we've covered. And does, it is a bit more specialized. So I'm happy to connect you with him if that's yeah.
Okay. He writes public benefit corp or B Corp. Got it about foundations. We'll look into it later. Okay. I think you've answered his question. So.
I'm sure I haven't, but at least he knows that there's a much deeper place that has to be looked if we're going to dive into into foundations.
Okay. Hey, I'm just curious, how many hours does it take to put together an LLC? I would think an LLC would be one of the more attractive types of organizations a lot of entrepreneurs would want to have. So can you give us maybe some rough idea of what's involved?
Absolutely. So putting together an LLC is honestly one of the faster entities that can be assembled. Almost in a comical fashion, you can pay the state to prioritize your filings to have them done in under 24 hours. So really the answer to how fast can you get your LLC formed is something akin to how fast can you finish the paperwork and then get it filed and then pay that extra fee for the expedited filing. Filing your LLC is pretty straightforward. It is a set of forms that is available on the state's website. They're not overly complicated to work through, although as a lawyer, I always encourage people to work with lawyers to ensure that your forms are being filled out right the first time, because the state's not usually very open to issuing refunds if you have to refile. So they're not terribly complicated. The more difficult part for your LLC is going to be the publication requirement, only because you have to get it out in newspapers, complete the filing, and then submit to the state a copy of your proof of doing that publication requirement. Attorneys, and there are also other services that are available online that can help you get your company put together and fill out your forms, are very familiar with these and usually have their own contacts of who they can put you in with to ensure that you advertise in the right places. The advertising is not a prerequisite to forming, but it is a prerequisite to staying formed and valid in New York State. If you do not complete it within the time prescribed by the law, your company is then technically considered dormant and may be dissolved. So it is very important to make sure that your getting through all those things. But the short answer is you can get your LLC up and running very, very quickly, and then start hammering out the details afterwards to have the company on the books. But then you'd still want to start getting your operating agreement together, which can take longer depending on how many members you're going to have, if you're going to do it manager operated, if there are some particularities in how you want to have the internal structure, and any other quirks that you're worried about and want to have addressed in your operating agreement.
Right. Will probably also be one of those things that would be helpful to have a company like yours involved that so you know what it is that you have. I mean, it may be easy enough to complete the filing and get the LLC, but then, okay, how do we run this thing?
I absolutely agree. Part of what we talk with people about is obviously there are services online that can help you fill out the forms to submit them. I mean, LegalZoom, I'm sure everyone's familiar with that came out a long time ago, does those kinds of things. They will help you submit those forms. They're not always fully correct. They don't always fully get what you want done. One thing they do not really offer is the ability to help you with customizing your operating agreement and making sure it fits your needs. Generally speaking, they have a one-size-fits-all kind of form that they'll generate, whether you tell them it's single or multi-member, and then manager managed versus member managed. When you really want to make sure that everything you're concerned with is being addressed in your forms, nothing is really going to take the place of being able to actually meet with and work with someone who cares about your business and wants to see you succeed. Obviously, if cost is a huge factor for you, those kinds of companies online are very good for getting your generic documents put together. But I strongly recommend that anything beyond basic filings, you work with an attorney to make sure those things are done right. I can't tell you the number of times, even when I was working in that free legal clinic, that people would come in with their online forms that were filled out, and we'd spend more time undoing and correcting what they did than they did working with the online company to get it put together.
Right. Well, it goes back to your slide also about putting together a professional team that, just has an attorney, an accountant, other mentors that help you as far as, getting the advice that you need to be able to operate your business successfully. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's even as attorneys, we keep a professional network. Anything that involves real estate, I've got a list of realtors I talk to, and we're, lawyers don't go to business school because they're bad at math. I think that's always the joke. When I've got issues that I've got to work through, there are accountants that I speak to all the time. We utilize experts when we need to, and really so should any business.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. We will try and if you send that to me, we'll get it posted hopefully tomorrow. And thank you again for Coughlin and Gerhardt's support for our competition all these years, and again for you for doing this presentation today.
Yeah, and best of luck to all of you guys. This is a great program, and I hope you really do take advantage of it and really put in your best effort in it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
So tomorrow, please join us at 5 o'clock, 5 to 5:30 for our final session. We'll have a panel discussion with winners from the last 3 business plan competitions. Jacob Kumpan, I should say, of Claw Industries. Jacob Kumpan was the winner of the 2021 BLDC business plan competition and is co-founder and chief operating officer of Claw Industries, which turns landfilled glass into a cement replacement for concrete called Pantheon. There was a wonderful article in today's Press and Sun Bulletin about him. Laura Whitmore was the 2022 BLDC business plan competition winner. She owns Strategic Test Prep, a tutoring agency in downtown Binghamton that specializes in SAT and ACT test preparation. And then we have last year's winner, Stephen Gagne, who is the owner of Electric Light Apparel, a startup company that provides unique apparel products, and it uses flexible hybrid electronics to create textiles that have wearable illuminated graphics. Pretty cool product. Again, thank you, Sam. Thank you for all for joining us this evening. Thanks again to all our sponsors, M&T Bank, SUNY Broome Entrepreneurial Assistance Center, Binghamton University Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Partnerships, Freshie Website Design, Davidson Fox Certified Public Accountants, 3i Graphics and Signs, Coughlin and Gerhardt LLP, Attorneys and Counselors, Greater Binghamton Chamber of Commerce, IdeaCraft, Digital Marketing Agency, Small Business Development Center at the Kaufman Incubator, and the Triple Cities Makerspace. And thank you again to all of you for participating. Thank you and good night.